SkyConnect is a Zigbee coordinator developed by Nabokasa. Today we will see on how you can add it if you are running your Home Assistant in Docker or if you are running Home Assistant OS, especially if you are running it on a Synology. We'll start in a couple of seconds. As this may end up being a very long video, let's jump straight into it. Today we will be configuring SkyConnect to work with ZHA and Zigbee2MQTT. Please note that support in the Zigbee2MQTT is still experimental, so if you already have existing network and want to migrate from one stick to the other, you may not be able to do that. Also, we will cover both the installation inside Docker and Home Assistant OS or HAOS. As Synology also has some specifics, I will also cover those specifics, if you are running it in a Docker or if you are running it inside a virtual machine. First, we will try to get everything up and running inside the Home Assistant OS. If you are running Synology, next couple of minutes are just for you. If not, you can skip to the timestamp below. If you are running your Home Assistant in a virtual machine on Synology, make sure that the stick is already plugged in. And no, you must not plug it in directly in Home Assistant. You must use the provided USB cable and try to move the stick as far away from Synology as you can. This also applies to all the other installations. The stick should not be directly connected to the host machine. Instead, you must use or you should use the provided extension cable. Click on Virtual Machine for your Home Assistant, go to Action, Edit, Others, and under USB devices, select the Silicon Labs CP210X UART bridge. Click OK, and that is the only thing that should be needed for the Synology installation. At this point, your SkyConnect should be connected to your host machine via the extension cable. Also, your stick may automatically be discovered or it may not. If it's not automatically discovered, go to Add Integration, type ZHA. If you are selecting it from the list, make sure that you see SkyConnect, version, then your serial number and Nabokasa. Click on Submit. Depending on your previous configurations, you may receive this warning or notification. Upload the manual backup or erase network settings and form a new network. I will be doing the later one, erase network settings and building a new network. And that's it. Click on Configure and we can test it by adding a new device. The system can now accept the pairing requests. I have here one Akara device and I will try to pair it. And the pairing process has started. We can try and pair this button. Both devices have been added successfully. You can use Devices or Entities link to see all the devices and entities tied to your ZHA coordinator. If we open and close the door, you will instantly see the change in your Home Assistant. Same goes for the button. Now let's see how you can add it to the Zigbee2MQTT if you are running Home Assistant OS or if you are running your Home Assistant OS inside a virtual machine, in this case on Synology. As we cannot have both ZHA and Zigbee2MQTT running with the same coordinator, I have removed the ZHA installation. For the Zigbee2MQTT, there are some prerequisites. You need to install Mosquito Broker, which is very easy. In the add-on store, you just press Install on the Mosquito Broker. For the installation of the Zigbee2MQTT, we first need to add it to our add-on store, because it's not by default there. Copy this link. Link both to the installation instructions and this link will be included in the video description down below. Click on Add-on Store, 3 dots, Repositories, and paste here the link we just copied. Click on Add. If you have added it and you do not see Zigbee2MQTT, you need to enable Advanced Mode. Click on the icon next to your name and enable Advanced Mode. In the list of add-ons, you should see 3 Zigbee2MQTT versions. Actually, those are 2 plus proxy. Proxy is only needed if you are running separate Zigbee2MQTT on your system, but we are looking for this one here. Click on it, click on install. Before we go to configuration, we have to check a couple of things. First, let's go to settings, system, hardware, all hardware, and let's look for the USB ports. We have here one. Let's copy everything here. We will not be using TTY USB 0. Instead, we will be using this longer serial by ID, and we will copy the full path from here. Yes, you may use this /dev/TTY USB 0, but if you have multiple ports on a device and you have multiple USB sticks plugged in, with each update or each reboot of the machine, the port numbers can change. If you use dev serial by ID, this number will not change. Let's go back to settings, add-ons, Zigbee2MQTT, configuration. Let's paste here the path to our stick, and in front of it let's type port, column, and this will be port. But for the ZHA to work with Zigbee2MQTT, since it's still experimental, we have to add one additional line. Adapter ezsp. This defines the specific experimental version of the adapter. Let's click Save. If you are using MQTT add-on, you shouldn't need to fill in any data here. Let's go on Info and click Start. It can take approximately 1 or 2 minutes for Zigbee2MQTT to start. While we are waiting for the start, let's also tick Show in Sidebar. If we check the logs, we can see that so far everything is working okay. Let's click on Zigbee2MQTT. If you are annoyed with the white background, just click on a SUD icon. And once again we will try to pair devices. Click on Permit Join, and let's try to pair this device here. And the button is also on our network. If we click on the door sensor, exposes, we can test how it's working. Open, close, instantly. If everything has been set up correctly, inside the Home Assistant we can see that there are some notifications. Click on Notification, check it out, and for us to be able to see those devices inside Home Assistant, we need to configure MQTT if you haven't configured it previously. It's very simple. Click on Configure, Submit, and Finish. Under MQTT, once again, we can test and see how everything is working. Okay, this was an easy part. So far, we have set up ZHA and Zigbee2MQTT. No matter if you are running it on a Home Assistant Yellow, although you wouldn't install SkyConnect there, Blue, Raspberry Pi 3, 4 or any other hardware, including Synology virtual machine. Now let's look at what you need to do to get it working inside the Docker. Since this is a brand new recording setup, I have to set up everything from scratch. So here is the installation guide for Home Assistant if you intend to run it in a Docker. The steps are almost the same to add SkyConnect device. But let me first go through a couple of setup procedures. First, in the control panel, under the terminal and SNMP, let's enable SSH service. We need PuTTY, and the link to PuTTY, which is a terminal application, will be included in the video description. Click on Apply. I presume that you already have Docker installed. If not, go to Package Center, search for Docker, and install it. In my case, it's already installed, but I think it's empty, yes. For the next step, we have to connect via the terminal. Open the PuTTY application, type in the IP address of your Synology or the host that is running Docker, and click Open. If this is the first time you are connecting to your system, you may receive warning like this. Click on Yes. Now type in the username and password for your Synology. The steps now will be different if you are using Docker or any other machine other than Synology. Unfortunately, with the DSM 7.0 and 7.1 or later versions, we do not have USB support inside Synology. So we will have to install drivers. That's the steps that you usually don't need to do if you are running your Docker on any other host. Make sure that the stick is hooked up to your system at this point and type in following. This will try and list all the USB devices that are hooked up to your system. In our case, we don't see anything. Previously, there was a website where you could download the drivers. Unfortunately, this site has been offline for a long time, if not already a year. But in the meantime, somebody has created a GitHub repository that contains some or most or almost all of the drivers needed for Synology. A link to this site will be, of course, in the video description. Thanks to Robert Klepp for making this repository. What are the next steps? You have to download this file here, usb-serial-drivers.sh, and inside modules, you have to find drivers for your specific Synology device. If you do not know the processor type for your Synology device, I will also be leaving a link to this web page where you can search for your device. For example, I have 415 Plus, and this device requires Avoton drivers. In next step, click on Avoton drivers. Depending on the DSM version you have installed, go to that folder and download those drivers here. Not all drivers are needed, but anyway, I will download all 4 of them. And how do you download them? There are a couple of ways. The easiest way is to click on a driver and click on download. Repeat that for each of the drivers. And if you're wondering, we only need this driver here, cp210x.ko. But as I said, while I'm already here, I will download all 4. So in the future I have my system prepared for any type of USB device I need to plug in. And let's not forget to download this file here. Since this is a text file, we can click on Raw, press Ctrl S and save this file somewhere. There is also alternative way. In this case here, we have downloaded the drivers to our PC. Now we have to move them to Synology and then move them from a Synology to a specific folder. There is also option to use get command, then copy the full path from the navigation bar and then use that get command with that full path. It will automatically download the drivers to Synology to a folder where you want it to be. In our Synology, go to File Station and drag and drop those 4 plus 1 file we just downloaded. Now let's go back to the PuTTY. These files are located inside the Volume 1 Docker folder, so we will change to Volume 1. Let's list everything here. We can see the files here, and now we have to copy it to a specific folder. And let's move, this is mv command, all files with the extension ko to lib modules. If this command doesn't pass, we will use sudo, permission denied. So in front of move, just add sudo and then the rest of the command. Enter. You will have to enter password. Let's search for this CP driver inside the lib module folder, ls2 and star or asterisk, and we see that the module is there. And the last step is to copy and run the command to install everything. Let's copy cp, this file usr, local, etc, etc, rc.d. Once again, if you do not have enough privileges, just in front of a command type in sudo. If your password hasn't expired, you will not need to enter it once again. And we have to fix permissions for this file. chmod plus x and then full path and the name of the file we just copied. User, local, etc, rc.d, usb-serial-drivers.sh. And before I once again start the command, let me just type in sudo in front of it and let's press enter. The last step is to activate drivers. You do not need to restart your Home Assistant for this. You just need to type in the following command. Use the whole path. This is the user local etc rc.d /usb-serial-drivers.sh and add start at the end. Of course, you may need to add sudo in front of it. And that should be it. Let's now search for the USB drivers on our Synology. After running the script, you may need to disconnect and reconnect your SkyConnect for the Synology to see it and detect it in the system. Let's test everything by running the list command on the dev folder. We want to list all USB devices, so the command is ls dev tty and the capital U with the asterisk or star at the end to list all USB devices. And we have one device here. You may notice that here we do not have option to use by ID and then serial number because it simply doesn't exist. Also note, some installations may detect instead the TTY USB 0, TTY ACM 0, ACME 0. Now that the drivers are ready, we can proceed with the normal installation or normal configuration with Home Assistant. As this is the first time I'm installing it on this system, I have to do a couple of steps. Let's go back to the Volume 1 Docker folder. Here we will create a new folder called Home Assistant, mkdir Home Assistant, and this folder will be used to host all the files that Home Assistant creates inside Docker. And that way we will preserve, even if we delete the container itself and recreate it, all the files will stay here. This now is same no matter if you are running Docker on Synology, on a Windows machine or any other machine. There may be differences if you are using Docker Compose, Docker command line interface or the UI interface inside Synology. But for the simplicity, as this works on all systems, I will be using Docker command line. Type in following: sudo docker run -d to run it as a daemon, -- or -- name, and the name will be Home Assistant. This is the name of the Docker container, not the Docker image. -- privileged -- restart equals unless stopped. Then environment variable, time zone. You have to type in the time zone for your specific area. For me it's Europe, Zagreb. If you do not know your time zone, search for your city in the link that I will also be providing down in the video description. Zagreb. And here it is. You have to copy this one here. If your city is not listed, just find the city that is closest to you. Next we have to map the volumes. That's why we previously created folder Home Assistant, where we want to keep all of the configuration files. But we need to map that folder with the configuration folder inside Home Assistant. Type in following: -v for volume, volume 1, Docker, and then Home Assistant. And we have to connect it to the config folder inside Docker container. Next we need to specify the network. Yes, some will try and use bridge. Don't do it. It may work, but it can bring you more headaches than it's worth. Just type in following: -- network equals host. This means that the Docker container itself will be using the IP address and the network from the host. In this case here Synology, but whatever host you are using. If you would be using bridge network, it would bridge between your main network and the Synology network and the Docker network, which runs on the IP address 172 whatever. It, as I said, may work, but a lot of things may go wrong. For example, you can have issues with media playing, with auto discovery, MDNS, etc. So please go with the host network. And this step now will map our USB device. The step is similar if you are using Docker Compose. -- device, and then once again we need to map dev tty USB 0. Remember, this is the exact name of the USB stick or SkyConnect when you connected it to our host, with the internal device name with the same name, dev tty USB 0. And the last part of the command is address for the image that we need to download to install everything. ghcr.io home-assistant stable. And that's it. This now will pull the latest Home Assistant image, and it will map our configuration folder or Home Assistant folder to the configuration folder inside Docker, but also will map our SkyConnect with the Docker container. If you already have Home Assistant installed, the process is simple. You just need to add this part here, which is mapping of the USB stick to the command you used previously. Don't worry, if you have previously set up everything correctly and the files are saved locally in the folder, even if you delete the container from Docker, the files themselves and configuration and all the automations you did will remain. Verify that there are no typos, like the typo I made in the privileged command, and press enter. And that's it. Our Home Assistant should now be installed, or if you had it previously, updated with the device that we just added, and that is the SkyConnect. In my case, if I go back to Synology, go to the Docker UI, I can see that the Home Assistant has been installed and it's been running for 1 minute. Next step, of course, is to open the IP address of your Home Assistant. And that will be your Synology or host that is running Docker IP address with the port 8123. Since this is one of the 75th install I did in a couple of months of Home Assistant, I have to start from scratch. And we have here a list of devices that have been detected. Let's for now click on Finish. In your Home Assistant, go to Notifications and check if there are any new devices. Of course, in this setup there will be a lot of new devices because it's been started for the first time and a lot of things have been auto-discovered. Depending on your system and your luck, you may or may not see SkyConnect here. If you see it, click on Configure. If you do not see it, click on Add Integration, ZHA, and select it from the list here. I will click here on Configure. We will once again erase network settings and form a new network. And that's it. Our SkyConnect has been added to Home Assistant running in Docker on Synology. Click on Configure, click on Add Device, and once again we can try and pair two devices. If we go to Devices or Entities, we can see devices and all tied entities to those three devices: coordinator, door sensor, and the button. Opening and closing the door should instantly trigger this sensor, and 1, double, triple, or press and hold should be registered with the ZHA with the SkyConnect. And what is the procedure for Zigbee2MQTT if you're running it inside Docker? Well, I presume first of all that you already have Zigbee2MQTT installed inside Docker. I don't have on this system. The only thing that you have to do is in the configuration YAML file for the Zigbee2MQTT, you need to, in the section for the serial adapter, change the port to TTY USB 0, if that's the port name for your host, and add one additional line, adapter ezsp. And that's it. The same thing we did with the Zigbee2MQTT a couple of minutes ago when we ran it as an add-on. I really do hope that this video helped you and that you now have SkyConnect hooked up to your system, no matter if you're running it in a virtual machine, Home Assistant OS direct on the bare metal, or running it inside Docker. And yes, as you can see, it can be used with both ZHA and Zigbee2MQTT. Of course, if you have Synology, now you also know where you can find the drivers if you need them in the future, until jadahadal.com website is back online, if it ever is. If you did find this video useful, please give me a thumbs up. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank all of you wonderful people who are supporting me and have become YouTube channel members. Thank you all for all of your support. But also thanks to each and every one of you who has watched, liked, or subscribed to my channel. If you too want to support the channel, you can do so by becoming a YouTube channel member by clicking the join button down below. It costs only €2 or $2 per month. But you can also go to my merchandise store and buy something there. I will be seeing you next time. Until then, bye bye and have fun.